Hello, my cyborg zombies and cuties. I'm CJ Carter, the perpetrator of the Connor Wars, which is meant to be a fanfic follow-on to Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, done in as professional a way as I can possibly muster. Right now I am prepping the 11th episode, which is a red and yellow basket, and I think that's the title. I haven't paid attention to it yet. And I just recently posted a few days ago the 10th episode, Tumbling from the Ski Jump. Some of you may be wondering what that title is in reference to. It comes from the opening sequence of a sports anthology program seen in the United States called ABC's Wide World of Sports. In one segment of their opening, there was the image of a ski jumper coming down the jump and then losing it just before they reached the compression. And he fell off the ski jump, tumbled around at the base. Kind of awful. The host of the show, Jim McKay, mentioned that as part of what they were going to present was the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And that's kind of what I was referring to in terms of this episode, which is the thrill of victory. Yay, we beat Skynet. And the agony of defeat. They lost the refinery, and let's face it, John didn't fare so well in terms of the victory. Sorry, John. As I say right now, I'm prepping the 11th episode, which is an interesting exercise, considering that Tumbling from the Ski Jump was such an easy episode to write. The reason it was such an easy episode to write, I'm sorry, it's a long day, my mouth isn't working, was because I had been thinking about it since not long before I finished writing episode 1. Sometimes I think that far ahead. See, what had happened when I wrote episode 1, 1,000 Miles, I wrote a whole lot of scenes about Sarah and Ellison and Savannah that took place right after John and Weaver had chronoported away after the events of Born to Run, the series finale of Sarah Connor Chronicles. As you may recall, those aren't the scenes that are in 1,000 Miles, and there's a good reason for that, is that after I wrote them, I realized that I didn't want to spend my savings quite that quickly. I hadn't earned it yet. So I wrote a whole new sequence for Sarah and the past. And I kept in my pocket those scenes that I cut out. Except for the ending scene where Sarah is talking to Cameron before she locks her up in 2012. All of those scenes were originally in the first draft of the first episode of the Connor Wars. They've been tweaked a little bit to make it fit into the story better now that I have a lot of episodes under my belt. But for the most part, those scenes are as written. So that made the episode easy to write because I didn't have what was originally 25 pages, but which I edited down to about 13 before I had to bump it up again. So I didn't have those to have to write. But because those episodes existed, I knew I was going to have my reveal of Cameron's endo in the vault. And I've been thinking about that ever since. Not a lot. I haven't been obsessing over it, not like a few other scenes that are coming up in future episodes. But I've been mulling it for the past 9 episodes. You know, what is John going to say? Is Allison going to be there? How is Allison going to be presented, Cameron? For the longest time, Weaver was going to be wheeling Cameron's body out, and Allison was going to stumble on it. But I couldn't figure out a good reason why we would risk moving Cameron. It doesn't seem to gain you anything, considering how few people know the vault exists as it is, and plus it's a vault. You close the door and lock it, and you don't have to worry about people stumbling over Cameron. So that's how Allison discovering Cameron as she did came about. Looking at my notes again. One of the things that really comes through that Weaver said in the first episode, she has reiterated to Allison in the previous episode and in this episode, is the concept of family. Fundamentally, that is what this series is about. It's about who you include in your circle, who do you trust, and even if you trust them, how far do you trust them? How much time do you want to spend with people, and how much are you willing to let them go on their own way? There is an awful lot to explore with this, not just in terms of conventional family, Sarah and John, or Kyle and Derek, or others. Some more conventional families, sort of like the guardianship of Allison and Sarah and Savannah, but also like how Weaver has described it, that we choose who we make our family. Whether it's through adoption or marriage or blood or whatever. Ultimately, certainly from her point of view, what makes a family is a willingness of everybody involved to assume the responsibility of family. And that includes trust and companionship. And that matters a lot in the series that I'm telling. Because as we've seen so far, that agendas, while they are overlapping, aren't the same for everybody. Weaver clearly has a different agenda than John does. John's agenda, from the moment he jumped, is to get Cameron. At least that's his stated agenda. Along the way, he's had to modify it to become the John Connor. Allison has a totally different agenda. She wants to beat Skynet. She also has other issues involved that are propelling her along in the story, as well as some trauma. Weaver has a different agenda yet, which for now certainly is meshing with John's. Weaver has a vested interest in keeping John alive so that he can fulfill what his mission is, and also to keep him alive to and I'm not going to say any more about that. I'm sorry, I almost went too far. Almost told you too much.